Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the live stream. We've got a great conversation today. I'd like to say happy National Sleep Awareness Week. We are taking this opportunity to talk about the importance of healthy sleep to your overall health. And we're going to do this talking to some of our respiratory therapists, talking about sleep apnea and why it's important to diagnose and to treat it. And we got a full house here in this conversation today. We're going to kind of go around the circle. We got to my right here, we got Rebecca Brower. She is a registered respiratory therapist here at Mary Free Bed. And next to her, we got Bob Townsend. He's another respiratory therapist at Mary Free Bed. And joining us today, we're really excited. We got Mary Schaff. She is a sleep advocate, and she lost her husband due to undiagnosed sleep apnea. And also joining us, we got Gordy Smith. He's calling in from Lansing, and he is a recent Mary Free Bed patient who's been a longtime CPAP user. And he kind of got renewed with his machine that we'll be talking about in a little bit too. So for people who are watching this, they've heard of sleep apnea, but they don't know what it is. Can Rebecca or Bob kind of take this question? What is considered sleep apnea?
Start with the best, Rebecca.
Sleep apnea is actually two forms: central obstructive, and it's when obstruction is a patient's trying to take a breath in, but something's blocking it from going from your nose and your mouth to your lungs. And then central is more of a message disconnect between the brain and the diaphragm, and some patients have a combination of both. So when that happens, you don't have oxygen going to your vital organs at some point like you should, and so there's health risks involved with that.
So Bob, why is this often like undiagnosed? Why do not many people know that they have sleep apnea when they do? I've heard numbers, it's like 90% of people, it goes undiagnosed.
You know, it just goes to education. I think that, even your principal physicians and doctors' offices, your primary physicians, they know a little bit, but there's just not a great depth of education. And then there may be some stigma, along the way. Most people know somebody who maybe had this, but I would kind of pin it primarily maybe on a couple of things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because reading about this and learning all the facts, it's so many more people are impacted. And it's not just like a sound thing that your partner, hears the snoring and that's the problem. It really does impact your sleep and your overall health. Can one of you take kind of that? Like, how does it impact your sleep and your quality of your sleep?
Well, like Bob said, and you said, most of the time it's the snoring that people associate it with, so the severity gets missed. And at times, even, especially when we're talking about it with the patient's family in the room, it's kind of like a lighthearted joke. Like, yeah, we're trying to have family time and they're sleeping in the chair. Or, yeah, we can hear him snoring, so we know when he's sleeping. But then when we start to have the conversation and you're focusing more on the patient, and you're like, although that seems to be like a cosmetic or a superficial reason to treat, there's actually more that goes involved with that. And so the snoring is the obstruction, which we explained kind of what that is. And then at some point, your body's either going to realize that not enough oxygen went to the heart or the brain to where it feels unsafe. And that's where we hear about the jerking and the gasping and people moving a lot in their sleep. And then beyond that, if we don't treat it, we see other problems. So the first one we usually open up with, and is a little bit more well-known, is the cardiac injury, coronary artery disease, death to that tissue, and your risk of stroke. So the brain's also affected. But then we get into more of like, are you grumpy with your family? Because, when you don't sleep, it's kind of like having a newborn baby at home. You're exhausted, you're moody, you don't have patience. And then as we get further in the conversation, we usually bring up, your high blood pressure. You should be resting and digesting. And if you're never letting your body get to that stage of sleep where most of that is happening, you can put on weight. And then we see increased risk of diabetes and hypertension. And so that's a lot of the things that people don't realize that they might already be suffering from beyond just the snoring that seems to be bothering everybody.
Bob, what are some of the tools that are at our disposal to help? Like if someone does find out that they have it and it wasn't undiagnosed and is diagnosed now, what are some of the tools that people can use to help?
Sure. So primarily, we're going to use a system called CPAP. It's kind of a basic mask setup. So you get a little positive pressure or, a little something to hold your airways open. Most people who have the obstructive form that Rebecca, described, with just a small amount of pressure, and you're seeing the picture of a mask here.
Mm-hmm.
It allows the back of the throat per se, or the, beginning of your back of your tongue, where everything can kind of collapse or get in the way as you get into a deep sleep. It allows that to stay wide open, lets the air pass in and out without any hindrance. So that's your primary means. We we look at that here. Is that enough? If you need a little more, and for instance, if you go to a sleep lab and they look at an overnight study, they may use a little bit more pressure and a different dynamics called a thing called BiPAP. So there's different levels of therapy when you look at the mass treatments. There are other kind of appliances out in the field, but primarily here we use the CPAP and BiPAP therapies at Mary Bed. So.
And we brought Gordy onto this conversation because he's been a longtime CPAP user. And so I want to hear, what was it like for you? How did you sleep before you started using a CPAP machine?
Very badly. I used to work for a company in Grand Rapids, and once a month I used to have to drive up for corporate meetings. And there were a few times I almost fell asleep at the wheel. My wife used to tell me that they could hear me snoring through the floor. And she used to nudge me all the time to get me to wake up because she was afraid I'd stop breathing. And I kind of took it lightly at first. Oh, that's just the way I sleep. But I wound up going in and getting tested for it at one of the local sleep places here in Lansing. And they said I had a very bad case of sleep apnea. And I wound up getting a CPAP machine. And this was probably over a decade ago. And I'm never without it. I love it. And it takes a little getting used to. Some people have some problems, getting adjusted to wearing something on their face. But once you do, you don't ever want to be without it again.
Yeah, you told me a story once that you went to camping or something like that, and you forgot it, and you made the trip all the way back.
I did. I made a trip an hour back to Lansing, and then an hour back because I didn't have my sleep machine. Now I have one at the camper too. So nice. I won't forget it anymore. I have one at each place.
What was that process like when you first thought you had had the sleep apnea, the testing? How long did it take from that moment of, okay, I'm going to do the test, to when you got the machine and you started using it?
Well, I did an overnight sleep study the first time. I went in. You usually go in probably 8:00 at night. They have you in bed by about 10, and then they have a lot of different things hooked to you. You're monitoring your oxygen levels and movement of your legs and arms and a bunch of different things. I don't know what all the test was, going to tell you, but and then they release you about 6:00 in the morning. Somebody comes and picks you up. Then it takes about a week or so for them to come up with the actual diagnosis. And I'll tell you what, they took good care of me. They got me a machine, and I think I'm on my probably third or fourth machine now.
Right.
And I'm just very happy that this technology exists for people. I think many years ago, if you had sleep apnea, there was probably nothing they could do for you.
And how would you rate your sleep after you started using your machine?
Well, I noticed one thing right away, and I started dreaming. And that's something I did not do. And I knew that at that point, I was reaching that deep sleep state that I never really got to before. So I don't dream all the time, but I never used to dream before, and now I do sometimes.
So, Mary, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us and join. Your family was also impacted by sleep apnea. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what your family experienced with sleep?
Well, my late husband, John, died from obstructive sleep apnea at 57. We knew something was wrong. He snored loudly and stopped breathing, but we didn't know what to do. Very little was said back 10 years ago. But we began to realize that John had been experiencing ongoing sleep problems that began to negatively impact his daily activities. I mean, like you, Gordy, saying that you were falling asleep during the day, possibly driving. This was happening to John. He could not stay awake. And yet he went to his doctors and, they didn't associate anything with, sleep apnea. They focused on other things, but not the sleep apnea. So we really were blindsided by this. We seriously had no idea that John was in fact suffering from sleep apnea, and the ongoing lack of oxygen to his organs had unknowingly damaged his heart. So,
I'm so sorry for your loss. I just,
thank you.
it's something why this is why we have these conversations, for people to know that it is a very serious matter. I mean, Rebecca and Bob, do you guys ever go into those details with patients who maybe not knew about sleep apnea, that they had it, and how serious of a health risk it could be?
Yeah. And
Yep.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Parker. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, like we said, the conversation's usually lighthearted, and then you get into things. In fact, just recently, we had a patient who missed a sleep test because he had gotten in a car accident. And so as we're talking, he's like, yeah, I'll get it done here. I was going to get it done anyways. I said, well, we like to just go over the risks, because we know when you go into that part in the machine, that might be the biggest obstacle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, here's what could happen if you choose not to treat it, but you have it. And as we're going through all the symptoms, we got to high blood pressure. And he and his wife looked at each other, and he's like, well, they've told me that I have high blood pressure, but no one can figure out why. I'm not obese. I'm active. He wasn't very old. And so he's like, that might be it. He's like, I wonder if that's what's happening. And so sometimes, like I said, it's not the most obvious, like stroke or you're overweight. It's like the sneaky symptoms of it that you have. And he ended up being very successful with his treatment. But just having patients aware that this isn't just a nuisance, that there are serious consequences, sometimes helps them take the issue a little bit more seriously and helps us kind of dig into that vulnerability a bit.
So Mary, what happened after that time? And I can't imagine losing your husband, your partner, to this. What then went into this mindset where you started getting involved in education and trying to help other people? What was some of the steps that you did?
Well, when I realized that on his death certificate, sleep apnea was listed as causing his cardiomyopathy and ultimately his cardiac arrest, I then decided to go talk to the sleep doctors at Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins University, and Cleveland Clinic. And I said, you all know that untreated sleep apnea can lead to high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, a series of things, cardiac arrest, heart attack, and even death. And they all nodded. And this is nothing new to them. And I said, but what you need to understand is it's now written on a death certificate, and the public has a right to understand the seriousness of this. And so sleep apnea is so incredibly common, and it's a highly treatable disease, and yet so many people go untreated, and simply because they don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So I made a concerted effort to turn my personal tragedy into advocacy. And following John's death, I immersed myself into research, learning more about sleep apnea and the conditions that are associated with it. And my goal is to help generate conversations that will raise awareness for this life-threatening condition.
What you even ended up developing an app as well too, right? Tell me about that.
Yes. So this app allows you to assess your risk for sleep apnea and access important resources. With early detection and proper treatment, people can go on to live full lives with sleep apnea. This app is called Sleep by Cleveland Clinic, and anybody with a smartphone can access it and download it for free. And it's really a simple way to just take a test and determine, it'll tell you where you are, if you have it mildly, moderately, severely, or not at all. And then it helps guide you to go to the nearest sleep center so that you can then be more proactive and getting yourself fully tested.
So this is something I can just download on my phone right now if I wanted to and find it, right?
Yes. It's called Sleep by Cleveland Clinic, and it's available to Android users and iOS phone users. And so anybody can access it for free and, see what, assess their risk to it.
I think we got it right here. So just as we're talking, I searched it up on my phone and you can find it. So
Very easy.
Sleep by Cleveland Clinic, you can get it there. So make sure you check that out if you have any questions or you want to learn more about it.
Right. And I can't think of a better way when you're in your home just to take this test. I mean, just answer the questions and then you'll know, and then it will help guide you as to the next steps. For instance, you could put in your zip code and it will tell you where the nearest sleep center is that you can go to. So even before contacting your doctor, people at home can literally be able to use this and have a better understanding of whether they have it or they don't have it. So.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Mary, for helping the community, turning a loss into, a chance to give back. And we appreciate you doing that. Let's talk a little bit more about like our team and how we're helping patients here. So Gordy did a sleep study at home, or he went to a place that did the sleep study, but people who are at Mary Free Bed, there's kind of a streamlined way of learning about sleep and seeing if you have it. Rebecca, can you tell us about the Mary Free Bed sleep program?
Yeah, so we've actually initiated with all of our respiratory eval and treats now. So if we have any patient that shows up on our radar, we start the conversation with their eval of how are you sleeping, which was Mary's input, and it's worked really well. It's actually on our jacket she got us as well. But it does open up that conversation, especially in a rehab, of how are you resting when you're getting ready for recovery. So that's kind of the first step. And then we also have created literature and education, not only about the side effects. So if they only hear half of what we say, at least they have the paper to look at later or when their spouse or family comes back. But it also walks through the process. So if they're like, I might have this, or I would like to know, we do a pulse ox download study. So that gives us a few numbers that kind of puts us in the direction of, okay, do we need to do a formal test, or are we okay where we're at? And then if that comes back positive, there's another conversation with the patient. And then we work with St. Mary's Sleep Lab and St. Mary's Pulmonology team to bring us the home testing. We set it up for the patient. They download it for us, and then they'll give us results. So once our physicians tell us this is where we're at, this is how we want to treat it with some settings, Bob usually takes over, but we all can kind of do it. And we meet with the patient again with the machine and all the mask options. We do try and talk about like a full face versus nasal being more beneficial. But then we just spend time and time and time with our patients. So it could be some patients hit it out of the ballpark the first night, and some are like, that was a lot to get used to. And so we talk about the obstacles, different options, comfort settings. We'll sit with them after therapy if they want to watch TV, take a nap. It doesn't all have to be in one go or at night. And then from there, it's just a lot of building that relationship and making sure that we're answering questions. And again, circling back to the severity and like the relief that they get from treatment.
So Bob, how, we've got such a great team. How does it make it more streamlined and kind of speeds up the process that doing it inside a rehab hospital versus someone who's at home?
Yeah, great point. So, maybe in Mary's case is a primary physician said, hey, maybe you have this thing, sleep apnea. We should get you tested. In this day and age, it can take months to get into a sleep lab. Even the home tests, which really are, they're a modified version that happens in a lab. You can't always get to all the answers. That can take a while to get to. So while the patients are here, we've gotten much better from our feeder hospitals at cluing us in. Hey, we've seen some things while they were an inpatient at the hospital. They're hitting the door. We're asking the right questions right away. We can do the screen like Rebecca described. We can do the home test, which Mary has been helping people out by paying for these tests, which is what a gift. We get the results very quickly. We get the treatment started, and then we can work with them for the rest of their stay to make sure masks work. The pressures are right. Just kind of making sure that therapy is right for that person. Every single person has commonalities. Everybody has their own unique face shape, all kinds of different variabilities. It's great to work with folks, trying a couple things for a couple nights, tweaking a little bit, moving on, and then finally getting to that, I think we're there. Out the door they go, and what a great start they have. And plus, the encouragement we're able to provide. If you go through a sleep lab, you're there over one night. Half the night you're being tested, the other half you're being treated. They're trying to put you out in your home without, and kind of the expert help there the next night coming by saying, how did that work?
Mhm.
Okay, let's try this. Maybe we need to do something different. And then I'm by the next night saying, did we get there yet? Try it 3 nights. I think we're getting there, right, Gordy? I think he's shaking his head. We tried some different things while Gordy was there, and it's so good to see you, by the way. You look
Thank
great.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're looking great.
Thanks.
And I think, in the end, we moved your therapy a little bit, and I thought it, seemed to work even better. I mean, if you were sleeping well, I think we really made it excellent, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
very impressed with you guys having this available to me while I was in Mary Free Bed.
Yeah.
I was there for a completely different reason. And when Bob came in and said, well, gee, this machine you have is really old, and, maybe we should get you retested again. I thought, what a fabulous way to have that performed where I didn't have to go get a sleep study, somewhere here in town, that I could just have it while I was there because I was there anyway. So I was really quite happy with that situation, and Mary Free Bed and the team helped me get a new sleep machine. So I could, continue on with my sleep therapy.
Right. And the great benefit is you're there to recover.
Mhm.
They're really working you out, right? So you really want the best sleep you can get every night. And if you come there, you have sleep apnea, you want to continue your therapy. So our program allows for that. But if you don't even know you have it, we're able to tease it out and get you treated. We've had the physical therapists and the occupational therapists come to us as a team and say, wow, they're sleeping so much better. They're able to tolerate their therapy. That seems like are you working with them? Yes, we are. Yeah, they kind of know, they mentioned that. So it's huge. If you
Mhm.
get quality sleep, everything works better, right? So
Mary, what's it like to hear these stories, to hear the examples that Rebecca is sharing, and then talk to Gordy and hear his impact? Like, you decided to help support our team. Like, what went through your mind to reach out to us and to work with our team at Mary Free Bed?
Well, when I learned that Mary Free Bed's respiratory therapist wanted to do more to address sleep apnea with their patients, it was natural for me to want to support their efforts. I really wanted to help make a positive difference in other people's lives. And when I hear Gordy's story, it's nothing short of inspirational. His willingness to share his story gives me a glimpse into the incredible work that Rebecca and Bob are doing with their patients at Mary Free Bed.
And we just hope that through conversations like this, we can reach more people and talk more about sleep and ask that question that all the therapists ask at the very beginning. How's your sleep, right? How are you sleeping, or how's your sleep?
How are you sleeping?
How
How
are
are
you
you
sleeping?
sleeping? So Gordy, how are you sleeping now?
I'm sleeping fantastic. Thanks for asking. The new machine, every year they get better and better. I love the new face mask. And the machine's quieter than it's ever been. And I put that thing on and I'm off to slumberland in a few minutes.
Nice.
So
Great.
Oh man.
wonderful.
I
That's
would like
awesome.
to add, Mary, we do appreciate everything you've done for us.
Yes,
And outside
for
of
sure.
these stories, I would like to also share that since we've gotten more aggressive with this program and really gotten our hands around it, we've had coworkers get tested for sleep
Oh wow.
after talking about the side effects and just having it be something that's kind of been in our forefront now for a few years. We've also had some of our family members tested. So it's opened up those conversations and like a way to have them gently and loving, but also as advocacy. We've also learned how your equipment impacts your CPAP. So some patients we've had even very recently, they've come to us and they've been wearing their PAP religiously for years. And then they're like, I don't understand why I started having symptoms again last year, or something just doesn't feel right. And then come to find out they haven't been replacing their mask like they should. And so the plastic is breaking down. So educating our patients too on making sure that when insurance or your program kind of falls off with the supplies to keep getting them, it's impacted. I mean, I've worn my coat to Meijer without realizing. I just like my coats. And I've had people say, I was at Mary Free Bed, or why is it asking how you're sleeping? And so I've actually given short conversations waiting for like the deli meat to be cut. And I've said, Well, if you're sleeping poorly, and I've kind of given the spiel. So even just outside of these stories, I know that you're having impact on all of us, like so many ripples, and we just appreciate everything you've done for us.
Well, I'm happy to be a part of it. I really am. You're doing great work.
So we're getting and reaching more people. Is there anything else new for our team at Mary Free Bed, or that we're in our growth and trying to connect with more people?
So we're doing a study. It's been going on for a number of years, but some of the things that are coming out of it, like I mentioned a little bit, are hospitals that send folks to us are getting better and better at really screening and alerting us to folks who are maybe at risk for this. And so we are able to literally on day one start testing, which before it's been a struggle. It's are you ready? And you hit the door at Mary Free Bed and you get to a brand new campus that's busy, or now you're it's a lot to take in. But we've still been able to get there right away, talk about this, get the testing done. Like I said, St. Mary's has really worked hard at quick turnaround. The doctors are looking at it very quickly. We're getting the treatment started. Now we're starting to work more and more with the companies outside or past Mary Free Bed, the DMEs. We've had several meetings. We're starting to really make sure that the follow-up happens. So critical that 60 to 90 days, the company's going to take data off the machine. They want to know, is this effective? I mean, we had, a couple weeks maybe shortened because of we only get a certain amount of days of treatment. So we can say, here's where you started. Here's where the machine's gotten you to. But over 30, 60 days, it's critical that they're maintaining that and actually maybe even getting better because they're getting used to it, using it more. And so now they can work with a sleep physician post Mary Free Bed and all the other, hospitals they've been through. And they're getting their sleep. And those things all we're working on, looking at with the study, really pushing to get all of that as efficient as we can. And really, we've come a long way in a short time, I feel like. And we can certainly get better and better and better. So more is coming on that, I'm sure. I don't know if
Bob's done a great job of looking at the data. He seems to be really good at that, reviewing patients, looking for masks. So if someone's like, hey, the option you have just doesn't work, he will go down the rabbit hole of what can we find and when can we get it and how long is your stay. And then, like he said, Bob has really done a good job of trying to hold some more accountability of things that maybe just get lost in the cracks with all the follow-up appointments and all the providers that have been working with the patient to make sure that they're hitting that 90-day. Which also helps them with our education. Like if we're missing something, if we're forgetting to convey something, it circles back to our program and just making sure that it's like a seamless operation.
Awesome. And as we start to wrap up, Mary, what are you hoping viewers take away from this conversation? As it is National Sleep Week and we're trying to raise awareness. What do you hope that people are taking away from this?
Well, first of all, people have to realize the seriousness of sleep apnea. I mean, that's where it all starts. And it's a conversation that I hope people will have at the dinner table, at their family gatherings, amongst friends. But it's a conversation that has to be had. And again, we go back to maybe asking that simple question of how are you sleeping? But it's it's all about bringing more awareness to it and having these conversations in order to even get the process to begin. So, I think just people have to realize, don't overlook it. 1 in 3 adults have it and go undiagnosed. 90% go undiagnosed. So it's very, very prevalent in our country. And you know what? I think we're getting to the point where, people who are either, spouses or significant others who are, sleeping with the individual that has it, they need to say something to them and bring it to their attention because the people that have it don't always recognize that they have it. And so anyway, so that's kind of what I'm hoping is that, it's a conversation that I hope people will, begin to have.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Mary. And Gordy, we're going to end with you. What's your advice to somebody who has been through this, for a while? You had a first test, you got retested. What's your advice to someone who might not be sleeping well?
Get tested. I put it off for a long time. My wife prodded and nudged me to go do it, and I put it off. And I, in hindsight, that was really stupid. I should have just gone when she told me to go. And I would say that if you're having trouble sleeping, you're feeling tired during the daytime, you feel like you're going to doze off at the wheel, get tested. And it's something that's absolutely preventable. And these guys at Mary Free Bed are doing a wonderful job with their integration of the sleep apnea testing while you're there at the hospital for any other reason. So I would just, encourage people to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Well, everybody, Rebecca, Bob, Mary, Gordy, thank you so much for joining us on the live stream for National Sleep Awareness Week and talking about this important issue of sleep apnea and the impact it has. You heard it. 90% of people go undiagnosed, and it was 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people have sleep apnea.
1 in 3 adults.
Yeah.
That is crazy. 1 in 3 adults. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll have more information on our website at maryfreebed.com, where you can learn more about the sleep program at Mary Free Bed. We'll also have information how you can find the sleep app by Cleveland Clinic that Mary helped to create, so you can get more information about getting the sleep test. So everybody, thank you so much for watching, and stay well.